Is the church missing a human element? So why do you think at times that the church has gotten a bad rep for being disconnected from humanity, denying their human emotions, their tendencies, and just purely our human limits? See, humans, we have real limits, we have real emotions, we have real pain, so we definitely should not deny this. And do you think that by flat out denying this or turning a blind eye, it's actually hurting our intimacy with Jesus? So in these videos, I'm going to answer the question that has been haunting many, and definitely myself in the past. Can the church truly understand me? Does Jesus really get me? And why do I feel so disconnected from myself, but I've been in church my entire life? Okay, let's go ahead and jump on in. See, I've noticed that people can quote Bible verses all day long. They can say beautifully well-articulated prayers in front of large groups of people. They can serve hours and hours and hours at church weekly. But when they come home, they feel way more disconnected from themselves. They don't truly know who they are. And if they had a sobering conversation with themselves, they'd actually see that they're living a double life and they're carrying a lot of hidden shame that a lot of people in the church don't even know about. I feel like I can say that because I was one of them at one time. Jesus paid in full for our shame. So why are we still struggling and why do we still carry it? What it boils down to, it's a religious spirit. We're extremely susceptible to this if we're not careful. See, the church is hurting. People inside the church are hurting. But in the process, hurting people, we're pushing others away. We can't, as a church, we can't deny our human limits in order to avoid sin or to be holier. All Jesus asks is for us to just receive what he's done. This is a hot topic for me, very personal as well. And so I've broken up this topic into actually two different videos. Now the first video is it's all about bringing awareness to the human elements that the church has either denied or just full on turn a blind eye to. And then the second video, I'm going to talk about just breaking free from this. So here's why this is a really an important topic. The first is what I've touched on earlier, is that church members are really struggling to grasp their immense need of Jesus' grace. They're taking on a religious attitude, a religious spirit. They're taking on that older brother attitude from the prodigal son. You owe me, God. Look at all the good things I've done. Look at all the amount of time that I've served in church. Look at everything I've done good for you. Why are you not doing good back for me? I feel like I can say that because I was one of them at one time. They have these high hyper spirituality that's paired with swings of low insecurity, disconnect from self and others, carrying hidden shame. Many of us are carrying a religious spirit and we don't even know it. Another point is that younger generations are just walking away from the church completely because they feel the church just can't understand them, the pain, and just understand what it's like to live in this type of culture today. And the final point is that we're just seeing more and more leaders with poor emotional health that are making devastating mistakes, splitting churches apart, and people are just walking away, never coming back to the church. What are some aspects of humanity that the church actually is turning a blind eye to, or maybe they're just not even aware of, that they actually need to embrace? I think the first is that we're putting unknowingly heavy pressure on our leaders to be perfect. Lack of grace and space to allow our leaders to make mistakes. What is happening is that we say all the time that, yes, it's true, leaders are held to a higher standard. That is true. But there's also got to be a balance of extending grace to leaders too. Grace for leaders to just be humans. What is happening is that leaders are carrying this fear and this pressure that they can't make mistakes, they can't mess up. And then when they go behind closed doors, they have fear and pressure to even bring their humanness or their mistakes to God. They're not processing that alone with God either. Leaders can only give what they have. Leaders can only give to their congregation what they have actually been working on themselves behind closed doors. If they haven't worked through pain, their own personal pain and struggle behind closed doors, they will actually project that onto the people that they're leading. Another point is that you've got poor understanding of human emotions in the church. at times doesn't even know what to do with human emotions. There's actually poor teaching, such as that if you have human emotions, then you must have poor faith, or that you're just not spiritual enough. One thing that I used to hear is that all the time is that good Christians don't have anger. Anger is bad. Suppress the anger. We're not teaching in the church how to actually not be afraid of our own anger, but how to process emotion appropriately. Sit with emotion, process it. Do not try to push it away with Bible verses, just slapping a Band-Aid on. Emotions should not be typecasted as good or bad, but they're just purely a signal that something needs to be paid attention to. Suppressing your emotions is not fleeing from sin. That's actually a very unhealthy teaching. Okay. Here's another one. Heavy emphasis in teachings, or heavy pressure to be all in Christian. See, yes, absolutely, we are called to be radical, but do we talk about the realities and temptations of actually living in a fallen world? Is there grace for the tension? See, what happens is that when we're not having real discussions, actually bringing to light the tension of living in a fallen world, it's leaving people not feeling safe enough to share their struggle. They're walking away carrying a lot of hidden shame. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are so many horrible things going on in our world right now. I mean, for instance, schools telling children that it's okay to change their gender, or that their creator made a mistake on them. And that they're allowed to change their gender. I mean, that's horrifying. That is absolutely horrifying. Our culture is probably darker than it ever has been, or at least it seems that this way. But because of those things going on in our world, are we pushing back even stronger? Which is probably not a bad thing. But are we creating stronger separation and distinct rules that if you don't look exactly like us, then you are deemed bad and wrong? See, life at times can be gray. It can be very, very messy. It's not always so black and white. And what happens is that there's lack of grace for those in the gray or the tension. And people in the tension then will hide their sin, will hide their shame for years and years and years. And what happens is I've been very susceptible to this attitude, the attitude of that Jesus just can't understand me because he wants me to be better. So there's heavy pressure to be better, to clean up before God and others in the church. But we must have understanding and empathy. We must be people to really listen to those that are going through the tension and reassuring them constantly that they will not be rejected and they won't be judged, because what's happening is there's quick judgment in the church. We start to see quick judgment as praiseworthy or very much accepted because it's masked in fighting against sin for the world and staying strong to the truth. But quick judgment can also be rooted in fear of, I actually don't know how to handle this tension. And this is scary, and this is outside of my box, that this has not been what I've taught or what I know, and it doesn't line up with my rules of what deems right versus what deems wrong. I think the question to ask ourselves is, are we making judgments based on truth, or are we making judgments that are disguised as an accusatory spirit? There's a huge difference. See, an accusatory spirit is actually condemning. And we can easily fall prey to this. There must be empathy and understanding to take a look at the root of the deeper pain, not focusing so much on the action of the person, but taking a look at the deeper pain at the root, encouraging those to go to therapy. Therapy is key in order to get to the root of the pain, not always focusing so much on the symptom or the action. And the final point is that there is too much messaging in the church that does not include practical steps for the tension. See, the messaging is just don't do it. Just don't do those actions. Flee, run from sin, which absolutely there's a place for that. But also sometimes when we're running and we're fleeing, that's actually avoidance. That's slapping a Band-Aid on, trying to avoid the issue, the problem, the root cause. See, avoidance is only a temporary fix. And absolutely there must be boundaries that are put in place, but the root cause must be dealt with in order to get lasting solutions and healing. We've got a lot of messaging in the church of hyper-spirituality that actually lacks practical steps. This messaging of pray harder, have more faith, and then the doors will open. So what we see is a lot of Christians that are actually doubting that they're even in God's will because they've been praying for that job opportunity, those doors to open, but they don't see those doors opening. but they're not taking the practical steps that are necessary to have that job open or that opportunity come to them. And here is the final. Are we putting too much pressure to serve, to do good, that the martyr attitude is actually glorified? The serve, 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 sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice yourself, no boundaries, have no good things for yourself in order to progress the gospel. I think it's very humbling to always remember we are human. We have limits. We are not the Savior. But I will say, though, the beauty is that when we start to really grasp that we're not the Savior, that we need a Savior, that we have real human emotions, and that at times we make mistakes, and at times we lash out, and at times we act in ways we shouldn't. But the beauty is that leads us back to the cross. It leads us back to Jesus, to being able to grasp our immense need of His grace. And in that place, we find that He meets us there, that He covers us with His love, with His compassion. And there is where we begin to really know our true self, who we really are, and that's where deeper intimacy with our Savior grows. The last thing I want to say is it's actually really, it's heartbreaking how many people in the church are carrying a religious spirit that they don't even realize. It's really hurting and holding them back from their deeper intimacy with Jesus. Stay tuned for the next video when I share ways that we can actually break free from this, to connect back to our humanness in order to find our true selves, to connect deeper with ourselves and ultimately with others.